I want people to take back their mosques. I really do. I want them to believe that they have a right to fight for a brand of Islam that is progressive and that allows for women's rights.
Hello, my name is Jacques Berlineblau of Georgetown University, and you've just clicked into Faith Complex, a dialogue about the entanglement of religion and politics. Today we are continuing our discussion with Asra Nomani, journalist, Muslim activist, and central protagonist in the forthcoming PBS documentary, The Mosque in Morgantown. Welcome back, Ms. Nomani.
Thanks so much.
Are you ready for part two?
I am.
In your movie, we see you engaged in a variety of attempts to quite literally reform Islam. Can you tell us about some of those? Tell us about walking in through the front of the mosque. Why could you not walk in through the front of the mosque?
Well, I had to smile when you call me the chief protagonist because many in the Muslim world will call me the chief antagonist, right? I am not going to win popularity contests in many communities, and I didn't in my own in Morgantown. What happened was that in Mecca, I was able to walk through any door of the sacred mosque of Mecca, despite the fact that this is the most puritanical brand of Islam practiced in Saudi Arabia. Mm-hmm. But in Morgantown, West Virginia, I walked with the same head covering that I had gone into Mecca, and I had my son on my hip. The mosque was opening that night, a new mosque. I went to the front door, and an elder stood in front of me and said, "Sister, take the back door." Mm. And he stood like a sentry. Now,
it didn't just stop there. Apparently, you weren't permitted to worship in the same room as the men. Is that correct?
Yeah, after walking through the back door, we were expected to go up a back staircase into a balcony where you would stare at a wall. Mm.
At first, when I first read you and watched you, I thought you were calling for a new type of Muslim identity. But the more I thought about it, the way you think of your own work, you're actually going back to earlier Muslim civilizations that you find to be more secular, more tolerant, right, more open-minded about their worldview. So are you trying to bring about a new sort of Muslim, or are you actually trying to bring us back to an older, more normative sort of Muslim that's just been washed away in the past couple of decades?
Yeah, I want to take the slam out of the Islam that we see today in the 21st century. I want to go back to the progressive reading of Islam that we saw in the 7th century, not stay stuck in those readings, you know, because they were not progressive enough, even for our 21st century. 2 women equaled 1 man witness. You know, men were allowed to lightly beat their wives. I mean, this is all stuff that we have to have zero tolerance about in the modern day. But there was a progressive spirit that we can continue. Because, of course, the next thing that I'm asked is, why not just leave Islam, right? If this is what your religion is about, why give yourself a headache? And I say because I do believe that we can fight for an expression of Islam and all religions that's compatible with civilized life.
Let's get to that. Because in the movie, one of my favorite lines, the documentary I should say, is when your mom says to somebody who's cursing you out or insulting you, right, "This is your Islam, this is not our Islam." First, tell us about the line. What set your mom off?
Well, my mom is a woman who wore burqa. You know, she had her face covered as a child, as a girl. She was married into an arranged marriage where she didn't even have her wedding night until 3 days after the wedding ceremony, which is a long conversation. But my mom has seen all expressions of religion. She came to this country and she started her own business in the spirit of Khadija, you know, the first wife of the Prophet Muhammad. And what she's arguing is that there is no one interpretation of the religion, and you don't have a right to impose your interpretation upon the entire community.
Right. So I think between your mom and you, there was a type of disagreement, all right? Whereas you were assiduously fighting to remain within this mosque, right? And to reform the mosque from within. I think what I heard your mother saying was, "Asra, darling, maybe it's time to set up your own mosque." You know, in Judaism, we have Reform, Orthodox, conservative branches, and I think the division actually keeps us from gouging one another's eyes out. If we had to share a house of worship in common, I don't think it would be very pretty. Do you think that's the next step for Islam, to accept denominationalism?
We're at the beginning, I think, of that evolution that the Jewish faith went through in order to develop a reform, a conservative and orthodoxy. We have got centers now where women pray side by side instead of behind the men and in separate areas. My mom was absolutely right. I did not want to see the space there because I think that ultimately we have to challenge orthodoxy because in Morgantown we were a one mosque town, and to me that mosque represented institutional Islam, and we have to fight for the way institutional Islam is expressed in our world today because that is then the prevailing ideology.
So the movie comes out in mid-June. There'll be the predictable condemnations. There'll be the predictable praise. What do you hope emerges in the aftermath of the airing of your documentary?
I want people to take back their mosques. I really do. I want them to believe that they have a right to fight for a brand of Islam that is progressive and that allows for women's rights. I want every mother and daughter who is put in the back corners, dungeons, sometimes we joke, the shadows, to go into the main halls. We don't have to stand at the pulpit yet, but this is ultimately a right that we have. And I want a conversation to begin and take off in our community so that we can have that same evolution that the Christian and Jewish faiths have had that allow for different interpretations.
So you will be empowering bad Muslim girls?
I hope so, and I want them to know that they are fighting for good.
Asra Nomani, on behalf of bad Jewish boys and bad Jewish girls everywhere, I want to thank you so much for coming to the Faith Complex today.
Thank you so much. We're going to hang together.
We're going to hang together. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I said all that.
Suddenly, what you call creeping conservatism is sensitive. What do you mean by creeping conservatism?